Bright, Foster, Jones, and more.
We've got a forum,
We still got a couple minutes.
we've got a.
All right, we're live.
I'm looking at the clock.
Sorry. I can't see past Eric's head.
4:29.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. I'm gonna take something out of order. The first thing on the agenda will be to nominate and elect a chairman for the coming year, 2024.
Nominate Rick Savage.
A second.
Do you accept that nomination, Rick?
Doesn't matter, you forced into it. It's like the
It's
secretary.
like the secretary. It's better than the secretary job, I can tell you.
Hang on a second. Don't worry.
No other nominations? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you very
Black
much.
seconded, right? Who seconded Black?
I did.
Okay.
Okay,
She needed.
Wait,
advice.
I'd like to thank you for your service and Chris. So thank you, guys.
I think definitely thank Chris.
Okay.
Anybody that wants to pick up the pen.
I mean, currently Jim is your vice and Chris is secretary, probably should.
Yep, reconfirm. Would you like to nominate vice chairman and the secretary?
I nominate Jim as vice chair and Chris as secretary. Can we do it all in one
I
motion?
second it.
Yeah, one motion, that's good. Any other discussion? All in favor, raise your hand.
I,
Opposed? Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
excellent.
All right, folks, we'll carry on. First item is to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2023.
So moved.
Moved, seconded.
Second.
Any comments about the minutes? Okay. I wasn't here, but anyway, John, you said it was mostly about Seal Harbor and alignment. Yeah, okay.
Before we go, can I get I'm just, you guys are going at a rapid pace. Can I get who's online for attending?
Bill
Yep,
and Donna.
Bill and
Thank you.
Donna,
Thank you.
okay. All right, approval for the minutes of December 12th. Is the motion?
I make a motion, we accept them as read.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand.
I,
Opposed, it's carried. All right,
Who
thank you.
seconded that?
I did, I think, some, you did.
Oh, Jim might be
Someone
on
did.
too online.
Okay,
Says Harry.
new business.
That's him.
Ordinance review with legal questions. And, we got a nice letter from our attorney about mooring classifications. Everybody should take a minute to look at that. First one was, can the town update its mooring wait list to use numerical values to provide preference to certain types of boat owners while leaving resident shorefront properties as a top priority? And you guys can all read this better than I can quote it, but yes. Would we like to discuss anything in there?
I haven't had a chance to read it enough to make any discussion.
When do we have to, like, if we wanted to make a change, How much time do we have? Is it till March for the?
I think our March meeting, we would have to make recommendations.
We would have to, if we're looking at doing something for our ordinance, we, would need to vote on next meeting on the proposed change.
So could we review these and then get back at the next meeting?
Time-wise, if we don't do what we wanna do now, and we get it written up by Patrick, and we vote on it at our next meeting, we're out of time.
Yeah, I think we better take a few minutes and read these, items over.
Do we have anything else on the agenda?
Not really.
No, I just got a quick update on, 23 calendar year for you, and,
Yeah, let's take a few minutes and read the, first one is the mooring, wait list procedure. And then commercial operators transferring moorings to family members. And then, can mooring classifications be changed or revoked? That's interesting. Can a landowner give up property rights to obtain a mooring? And can the town move an existing mooring to make room for a dock? That's it. Very good topics. So let's take a few minutes and review them, and if we have comments.
I scanned.
All right, John, can I grab your other copy there for a minute? Thanks.
We'll trust my memory.
I don't have a page number here, so I'm not sure which is.
John, this is Donna. I have a question. I received an email from you that said document 1. Were there other emails that had other documents or just document 1 only?
no, you've got exactly what everyone has in front of them here.
Okay, so document 1 is the only document and no other documents.
Right,
That's correct. Should
Okay.
be a couple of
2
pages.
pages.
Let me see.
But I don't have a. So I may be out of order with the rest of you guys, but anyway.
Which this one's the third.
All right, okay. This is, the first one is in reference to the town mooring wait list procedure. To use numerical values. Like we are currently doing, right?
We wanted to. Chris's idea was to put a point value. Cause if someone qualifies for more than one of the things, they would have more of a preference than someone that only qualifies for one. Granted, riparian shorefront landowner is always gonna be the top, but, there's 8 or 10 different classifications, from riparian all the way down to, I think the bottom of the rung that gets the least amount of points is a commercial rental mooring or something like that.
Have you read through this?
I have,
What'd you think?
I think he says we can do what we wanted to do, or what Chris's idea was to. It's something that would be allowed.
So we need,
I don't necessarily. We need to. Some of these may be more than we can accomplish for this town meeting. But now we've got the ability that, yes, you can do this, so.
But aren't we already doing this, John?
We do, but we don't do it in the manner that was presented by Chris.
it all kind of gets, like, if I wanna upgrade my mooring, then I'm on an existing mooring owner, so I go onto that list, but there's other, like, if you're a resident or non-resident or commercial fishing or commercial operator, all those things. So I think what Chris is saying, that there's like maybe 8 things in there.
Yeah,
So
you
you'd put
can,
a number on them somehow, whichever one was the most important one would be 1 or 10, and you'd go from there, I guess. So I don't know how we figure out which ones other than resident, I don't know what you built.
So it's a numerical list down from top priority to the lowest. So you get a score as you go down the list, and the total value of that score out of the 8 or 9 categories is the score that goes on the wait list.
So we need to figure out which is,
How the scoring
So
works.
you invert the priority from 1 to 8, you get an 8 at the top, where you're a shorefront resident,
right,
you know.
He's just saying, we haven't decided which qualifications they are and what the weights are for them. But that's,
So our ordinance dictates what each qualification.
so that's
are
kind of in the
existing.
order already?
Yeah,
oh, there you go, okay,
Well,
cool.
I'll see you.
so you have the list 1 through 8,
Yeah,
so if you take 8, put it at the top and 1 at the bottom.
yeah, we understand.
I got the ordinance here, you know.
That.
So you just wanna leave the list as it is, but you just wanna flip the number and give the top one an 8 and then so on down.
If the committee's good with that, you know, we also, one of the questions I asked was if commercial operators and commercial fishermen could be on the same plane in that waiting list. That's one of the things I wanted to see at the lawyer, so. A
He
commercial,
said we could do pretty much what we wanted.
so what I'm saying is we don't have to keep the list the same. We should identify the list. Obviously, the shorefront property owner dictates number 1. And then after that, I mean, resident, you know, we can change that's one of my things, and Rick talked about, to make it fair in the harbor, a commercial operator and a commercial fisherman are even on that same playing field.
I have a question. So if the residential is the highest weighted by calling it number 8 in this case, I guess if that's what you're proposing, then wouldn't it have to be a greater number than 8? Because otherwise they wouldn't always be outweighting the rest because, for example, if you are a commercial operator and then 2 or 3 of the other qualifications, if you add 7, 6, and 5, that would override residential. So how would that work?
So
According to-
if you're 10 down through, so if you were your existing mooring owner, that takes top priority, right? And then, but you wouldn't be, you're looking to own a renewed permit or, you know, get a new mooring versus someone that's existing mooring changing series. So if you're just changing series in that residential commercial. So there's 10 in the category, including houseboats, I guess.
We might have to figure out a weighted schedule, but I think the concept is, you know, that people who qualify for a number of things, you know, a number of those items would be elevated because they had many privileges, so to speak, at that point.
So
And it's not a privilege thing, I'm just saying it as those words.
Okay, I have another question then.
Qualifications, I guess, is better than privilege,
Yeah.
those qualifications.
How was this done without this number system prior?
It really has, other than the top couple of tiers, it really hasn't been done.
And to the best of the harbor master's ability, and it
And-
can be on the applicant to provide the pertinent information of how they qualify. I'm a resident, I'm a shorefront property owner, and they have to show proof or.
And the shorefront property owner is always gonna be number 1, no matter what we do, right? If you want,
Well, existing
The
or,
riparian,
yeah, that's
Shorefront.
always here. Out of
Right,
discussion.
but did you address the question I had is if they're always number 1, then they have to be, if there's now 10 qualifications, I thought there were 8, but now there's 10. If there's 10 items, then they can't be just number 10. They're gonna have to be like a 30 or something, because otherwise the sum of all the others could override the fact that you're,
but they're very different qualifications. So your seven's existing mooring owner changing series. You're not gonna be all of them at the same time. And we should, I mean, you'll have to run a trial on it, but they're very different in the status of each one. There's,
Okay.
you know,
I guess
You're
my
not-
question is, can they be combined? Can you be more than one thing?
I take it as landowners always gonna be,
The
have the right to
riparian-
that, that's out of the
Right.
the
discussion. They always
riparian
get
is
first
always
choice.
gonna be number 1 on the list,
right.
no matter what.
Without,
No points, no
Right,
points.
so that,
Donna, Donna, to answer your question, we could come up with a weighted system so that it was equitable the way that you're suggesting. However, we just haven't thought it through at this moment, okay?
But we could give
Yeah, no,
landowner,
I understand that we haven't done that, but I just wanted to understand that if you're saying that the riparian rights trumps all, then you're gonna have to develop a system that
Right,
actually
it would be a
has that
weighted,
happen.
it would be a weighted system where that would be the greatest weight.
I think. the
Right, because someone
system
there,
is that-
someone just said, you flip the numbers and the person who owns the land is a 8, and that couldn't work because that would be overridden by the other ones, the sum of them added up together. So we,
I understand, and that's why you would use a weighted system.
Or just that the system is that the state statute says they have a right to it, so that's kind of not our question,
That-
right? They
that's-
are always gonna have it.
For
Do
new
you,
warrant.
do you understand what I mean by a weighted system?
I was the one who suggested the weighted system, yes. So that,
Okay, so.
so that does
why do
trump
you-
all because,
Why do you
because
keep
you-
asking the question? I mean, you just make the riparian the heaviest weighted thing,
Give them a
and
hundred.
then
right,
there's.
because someone had
that
said that
is-
they would be number 8 and that couldn't
Right,
work.
we all agree that that was
Okay.
only an example. And,
Okay.
and that was a simplified example, just
Okay.
to motivate the conversation.
Got it.
And every time you ask, well, we have this one thing riparian that's gonna be something else, I'm suggesting that it's weighted. And now you get it?
Oh, no, yeah, I just want to make sure everybody else got it as well. Mhm.
So Chris, let me ask you.
Oh, okay, well, I don't know that.
You
I thought
understand
you had
this
the different-
well, so why couldn't it have just one classification, one number, and whatever the highest one is, and that one is the one that positions them?
So first it goes, the first thing is existing mooring owner. So they're giving up a mooring, so someone else will get a mooring. So they get it first. And then we go down to town-owned transient, which we don't really get
Yeah,
into.
but why wouldn't that person always be number one? And then the next, whoever, a number two would never take
I
a
think
number
he's talking
one.
about combining something, so that like a resident commercial operator would be higher than I don't know where.
Right,
the
so
thing
if
is,
you
than
have
a
more heavier
non-resident.
usage, if you're Rick and his boat and it's working off the dock, sorry, but not three in there, just for Jerry. And he wants to upgrade, right, get another mooring, he goes before someone that's a resident pleasure craft that's trying to upgrade and get a mooring. He's gonna get a bigger tour boat, right, in commercial usage in the harbor, and he's gonna give up his mooring, then he should go before someone that just wants to get a bigger yacht here for a couple months. And so as you look down through the list, where you have, like, and then existing mooring owner changing series, and then the resident commercial fish, which we talked about being the same as commercial operators, then it goes pleasure craft, and then it goes non-resident. So the people basically with the higher usage would have the first priority.
Right.
And then if the application for one or more mooring, which was brought up. And then the houseboats, which we don't even allow, but, so that's how kind of just putting a number value, so someone that's commercial, that's trying to change its series, or, you know what I mean, modify that, would go before someone that's non-resident, non-commercial.
Cause currently it's existing mooring owner, you go to the top of the list, but they don't
Right.
go through all the.
Even, even with, even as it's listed here, we're really not changing anything.
No,
We're just putting a point system
A
to.
point system, but it's almost like it has a point system by, the way it's listed already.
But we don't do
But
that,
we
we've just done,
We don't know, the person doesn't know if you're a resident. Like right now, unless John does an amazing job, but he has to know. He isn't provided the information, like on the wait list form, if you want to enter a wait list, if you just checked it on the wait list, hey, I'm a resident. I want to
Well, that
upgrade,
should be on there anyway, yes,
you get what I'm saying?
yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be this point system that values, but if John looks easier for him to say, okay, this person's a resident, they want to change their mooring series. And they're commercial, meaning their usage is gonna be more than just a couple months out of the year. That should come before someone that isn't using it or isn't a commercial, you know what I mean? The level of usage of the mooring in the facility.
Well, I'm looking at the list right here, and, other than a value on each one, I mean, if you gave each one the value as they're listed, 1 through 8. And would that satisfy you?
That doesn't work mathematically.
You have to invert the numbers, so if you have 10 categories. Your bottom one goes correct to 10.
Or we can
You know, the
eliminate
top
them?
one goes to 10 and the category said 9, 8, 7, 6.
Yeah,
But as what you're saying, Rick, if the guy checked off, or woman or whoever person checked off. Existing mooring owner and resident, that would come, 2 checks. I mean, it could be as simple as that.
yeah.
I mean, it's something for further discussion, you know what I mean, that it's not a finite system, it's just an idea of. Making it, fair for people that. Might not, fall through the cracks, so to speak.
Have you had this issue come before you, John?
Not really. I mean, the only things that we've really been doing at all is the existing mooring owner, the riparian, commercial fishermen. So we really haven't, no one's pushed it. These have been on our books for longer than I've been here. And, we've also got to figure out a way to track all this in our program and make it work, which is gonna be the most difficult piece of it.
Well, the other part too is that your existing list is probably based on chronology.
It is.
And so now you're gonna change that chronology because this guy ends up getting a commercial license, so now he's gonna. I don't know if it's,
That's the thing. We've got people that I've got people on mooring lists that have been on there. I think I can go back into the 90s. I've got people that have been on.
Chronology would have to be weighted as a value and added into the system, because like you just said, it wouldn't be fair for someone to be on the waiting list since the 90s and then all of a sudden get to the bottom.
But I think the way the ordinance is written, there's supposed to be some sort of value given to those, right?
Ultimately, most towns with resident, non-residents, they have a scale like 5 to 1 or 10 to 1. So 5 resident moorings have to be given out before 1 non-resident's given out. We are so far diluted that so many of our moorings in our harbors are non-residents that we could go, I don't even dare take a guess how long we could go if we wanted to play that ratio game without handing out another non-resident mooring for 20, 30 years.
And why this came up was because of our changing of the ordinance from resident to non-resident.
And the increased pressure on moorings. I mean, our mooring wait list, I would guess in the past 2 or 3 years has more than doubled.
And it's probably gonna keep going.
And it's a steady flow.
John,
If at least once a week, there's somebody calling or coming in that wants to get on the list. Even when you tell them that they're potentially gonna be waiting 30 years, they're happy to give you the money and get on the list.
so. Knowing all this, right now, do you offer moorings to non-residents if they come up on the list? Or are the only people that are, rising to the top are always residents?
We're working chronologically right now at this point,
So you have no preference, is what you're saying?
other than to riparian.
Right.
If you came to me and said, I own whatever Harborside Drive, I have a boat, I don't have a mooring, I want one.
Right.
They go to number 1 on the list unless there was another riparian that had been there before them.
Okay, so
This existing mooring owner transfer goes.
I understand. So, can I just summarize one thing here? So it seems to me that, the system's working pretty well at the moment, not perfect, but pretty well. And that the biggest change, because we're doing the residential, non-residential kind of thing, that seems to push a change. And hearing that there's a lot of pressure on this, I would feel comfortable saying that for a while, we only allow residential applications for new permits. Because that's sort of what we're implying by trying to game the system with this, point system.
Right.
Is really to help residents, get the upper hand on this.
Sure, but my only thing is, say the person who's been paying for a wait list for 30 years.
Yeah, right.
Under whatever rules that he knew of when he got on the list.
Yeah,
If we do that and that person that's been on there paying for 30 years, all of a sudden, he's got no chance in getting a mooring for another 25 years. Is that, that's part of my quandary
well,
in
here,
my brain
sure,
to figure out is that fair? Because this guy got on the wait list under potentially different set of rules, and then the rules get changed. And does he get penalized, or is he kind of grandfathered in the place where he is?
I don't think there was any promise of anything when you pay the money, other than you're on the wait list for the wait list is.
And it's
Subsequent qualification.
determined by the ordinance. It's already written in here how it's.
That
supposed to
we
be.
haven't been using the ordinance that
We
way,
haven't,
but
we
it's the
haven't
way
been
it.
following the rules that we
supposed to
have
be.
in front of us.
So,
So the people that actually qualified higher had not been given a priority. They've been sitting on the list and should have been higher up than those other people. Per our ordinance.
It's not negotiable. We have to follow the ordinance, correct?
Sure.
so that would be my suggestion to resolve this, is to just say that we would close or give preference. I guess, give preference to residents for applications in the near future.
That would have to be written in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's
doesn't
why
this-
I'm now.
Doesn't the state have a percentage requirement? I read it just before I came on and
10%.
I think the 10%, that's why I mentioned 10%.
10% given out or?
Not to non-residents.
But I would dare to guess that we are 30 to 40% non-resident
oh, I'm
Mooring.
sure.
at this point.
So,
So like I said, we could literally potentially go 20, 30 years without ever giving out another non-resident mooring.
I think almost maybe a fair thing might be to say that we make a threshold of like 20%. Like if the state says that the minimum's 10%, we could just say, we'll set a threshold of 20% and be generous. And then just wait for that to come down, and then we can.
How's that
level it.
gonna apply though, Howard, because we're already at 30% or more.
And
Right
also,
now.
we have to be, we also have to be strict as, we can't be we can't be more lenient than the ordinance. We can only be more restrictive than the ordinance. So why can't we just follow the ordinance? I don't understand. Now that we are aware of what we're supposed to be doing, shouldn't we just follow it?
Rick, can I answer your question? So the way I understand it is that someone will give up their mooring eventually. And if it's someone that's a non-resident that gives up their mooring, that would mean right now, there's no preference whether it's a resident or a non-resident that gets it. But eventually, over the years, if we only allow residents to get them, then a resident would get that. So the level would diminish over time to be eventually, at 20%. That's how that would work.
And are you saying you think 30% of the moorings are owned by residents or non-residents?
No.
You're get-
That would
No.
be my guess. It could be 40 or even 50.
So the state statute.
It's hard for me to give you a number right now. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm
no,
still
I-
in what we switched last year at town meeting, switching
Yeah.
all these people that used to be resident as far as the mooring, but now they're non. So I really don't know until I get through the whole process of this mooring registration. It could be as much as 50%.
So the state statutes, you hit 10%. If you go below 10%, next person on the wait list that's non-resident gets the mooring to get you to the 10%. So what Howie's saying, we're being over generous, we'll hit 20%. A non-resident, gets it, then when we hit 20% non-resident, they get it.
So once you get yourself to compliance, you just do a 10 to 1.
So
Every
Howie's
10
saying,
moorings given out, the 11th one is or the 10th one is a
and
non-resident,
Howie's
but.
what his ideas would be above the restrictions, so it would be above the state guidelines. Meaning we'd have the right to do it, we'd be more restrictive in that favor.
By,
We would be we would be being less
you couldn't-
restrictive.
You couldn't do more than the 10-1, you couldn't do 20-1.
No,
Right.
exactly. You can't do it. It just,
You
you're
could
not,
do
you can't be.
5-1.
Right.
Some towns do 5-1. I think I've seen some that do like 3-1.
Yeah, so 5-1 would be 20%, that's right, right? Yeah, 5-1 is 20%.
Right,
So that's kind of what I'm
When you meet the
suggesting, is
threshold.
5-1, yep, instead of 10-1.
We
Well,
can't
wouldn't
do,
it be
we can't
5-1
do
then?
20% because it's less restrictive. We can only be more restrictive. We can't be less restrictive. So we have to be at the 10%. 10 to
Well,
1.
we've done this for a long time.
That doesn't make sense.
So what, well,
The
that's
state
the
says
ordinance.
the state says 10-1 is the,
Once you get
Their
there, you have to
threshold.
do it.
if
So
you
in the
do it-
meantime, when,
We
like
can do
John
whatever we
was saying,
want until we get to 10%.
like John was saying is,
Donna,
it
will
would-
you please wait till other people finish talking?
well, what you don't realize is that when we're on Zoom and people are just talking across the room, we can't get a word in. So
You raise your hand, there's a little knot, you raise your hand.
right, I've done that and nobody sees that.
Because you're doing it
So-
from a photo.
Excuse me, say that again?
You're not doing it live, you're doing it from a photo. And how do I see your hand in a photo? If it doesn't,
There's a button, it's a hand raising button to be called on, but no one uses that. Are you familiar with that? It's down, if you look under, on the list across there, there's a mute button, a video button, a participant button, a chat button, a reaction button. If you go to the reaction button, there's hands and things like that.
Let's,
anyway, We don't
let's
use
move
that.
on. We're not getting ahead anywhere right now.
We'll work
I
on
was just gonna say, I would, myself personally, instead of even going through a whole number system, if we just went to the residents, whether you were a resident commercial fisherman, commercial operator, pleasure boat in the town, you were a resident. Like have no preference over either of those. If you were a resident, you know what I mean? Instead of going through this whole list of things, I'd be fine with that. I just feel like a resident in the town should get a mooring before somebody else.
This has all changed because of the change in classification of resident and non-resident. Up until then, when we treated everyone as a resident,
Right,
was-
but we weren't following that ordinance when that occurred. So we just got into compliance about that because what we were doing was wrong. Because non-residents aren't actually residents, so it's not that we changed the rule, we're just following the rule.
if you're still sorting out these moorings, as you said.
It'll take me this entire mooring registration process to get everything, so I can even give you a true guess of how many will now be considered non-resident versus resident. So we were probably pretty close to 10-1 compliance before, but like I said, this change in the town meeting last year has probably diluted us to a huge amount. And it's gonna take this season of mooring registrations before I can give you an answer.
So do we need to accomplish this year?
No, we don't, and as complicated as it is, this may take us until 2025 town meeting to get it written how we want it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I just asked Chris, if he was okay with us postponing.
I don't think we can solve this
Yeah,
tonight.
I agree.
It's too
Right.
complicated,
Too complicated.
and I can't give you the numbers until I'm done with mooring
Yeah.
registration this year.
What would you do? Ask for voters registration to see if they're a resident?
I am asking a lot of questions.
The town has a list of residents in the town of Mount Sir.
So today I talked to 5 different people myself registering moorings. And when I pull up their thing, I look at their thing and, you know, they've got a Maine address and then they've got an out-of-state address that instantly I'm asking the questions. And they're like, yep, you're right. I change it to, 107 instead of 57. And we go ahead and roll through. So I have probably changed 100 people so far from resident to non-resident between me, Adam and Jenya. So there's a lot. So this is, like I said, it's gonna dilute our numbers. So,
Well, it's a process in motion, and I think,
and it is.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, so let's wait.
let's wait on it. I don't think,
Different question. I mean, for waiting. But, in the case of, let's say, the Hadlock commercial mooring, did that get given to a pleasure boat?
No. No, it is still in the Hadlock family.
Okay,
They pulled off a transfer with a commercial fisherman to commercial fisherman.
okay, so that's what I was gonna say is, I'm not sure that when we talked about that. I would think that if you had forget about that specific family, but if you had a commercial mooring that was no longer being fished commercially by the person, that it should transfer to a fisherman, not,
That is not in those, but I had this conversation off.
I think it should. It
with-
should be.
I had this conversation with Patrick on the side about 3 years down the road. Do I have the right to go and request? Let me see your commercial fishing license, and have you been using your mooring for commercial fishing? I have that ability. If 3 years from now I go and do that and they can't produce a license or any landings or anything, I can yank it.
Right, but what I'm saying is it should go to another commercial fisherman, not a recreational mooring.
It would go to
And it would maintain,
whoever was the next person on the list under the,
So you're referencing back to what we just discussed, the wait list?
not really, I'm really
Yeah,
talking.
I agree with you, John. Yeah, so, here's the story, the deal is like, if that, let's just say that mooring was given up by the family after the person died or whatever. Okay, for whatever reason, would you expect that mooring to be a commercial mooring?
That's what
Hold
I'm
that-
suggesting.
No, oh, that's what you're suggesting, okay, so that isn't the case right now.
I believe that's not the case.
Yeah.
one of the questions in your thing there is, can a mooring be reclassified? And the answer is yes. Can a mooring that is commercial be put back into recreational status? Or can a recreational mooring be changed to a commercial because a commercial fisherman is the one that ends up getting it? And yes, it can be changed.
Right.
Okay,
That's
but
the-
absent that, isn't it a good idea to try and maintain the fisheries and keep it a commercial? If it was a commercial, keep it a commercial mooring and give it to a different fisherman who's on the wait list too.
Only to family members if the mooring will continue to be used for commercial fishing.
So the mooring is, when one is given up, it's gonna go to whoever happens to be at the top of the list. Whether it's a riparian landowner that is, owns a huge house, or whether it's, it,
But I'm suggesting a change.
I don't think we can't make that change. We can only, you can't. If they're whoever's number one on the list is getting the mooring, point blank, you can't
Well,
say this is a commercial mooring and it can only go to another commercial, because I can change a recreational mooring into a commercial mooring.
You see, a residential could go commercial. I agree with what you're saying in a way, but,
I'm saying the other way though.
yeah,
But,
Right.
it
but
could
it
go
Commercial.
either
go
way.
either way.
A commercial mooring becomes a mooring for Hinckley jet boat that's used for 1 month.
Yeah, but then the next one that, recreational mooring that's given up, that the commercial mooring, commercial fisherman is the person who's getting it, I can change that to a commercial mooring. So
you're
it's not
saying,
like once that commercial mooring disappears that it's gone.
you're saying it equals out, sort of.
I can change it to either one.
Well, it would respond to the demand of the wait list.
right, like, yeah, if there were no commercial fishermen on there,
But I
why
have
would we?
lists and harbors where there is no commercial person at all that's even on the list to get one. So if there's a commercial one that's given up, the person who gets it's gonna change it. It'll be recreational, but if someone commercial gets on the list, the next recreational one that gets given up that he gets, I can change it to a commercial mooring.
That must be my harbor.
Is the,
Well,
if the commercial mooring comes up and it was a non-resident commercial fisherman wanted it, but wouldn't a resident recreational come in front of that?
Whoever was next on the list,
Who's valued higher, I guess. on the
whoever
list.
is,
There's no value right now.
once we get this all figured out, they're gonna be, the wait list is gonna be what it is, and whoever's number one is the one that's gonna get it, whether he's happens to be a non-resident commercial fisherman, or it happens that we've gotten to a point where it's a non-resident recreational. Whoever's number one is the one that's gonna get it.
Jim, to answer your question, there's just non-resident. There's a non-resident commercial. There's only one value for that's non-resident.
Whichever on the list.
Very interesting. I don't think we can make any permanent decisions without John's input next meeting.
Well, I think it will be March
Yeah,
or later before I have mooring registration completely done, so.
Yeah.
Later this spring or before we close out for the year, hopefully I'll be able to give you a percentage of where we are, and we can work towards making changes for 2025 town meeting.
Right, no, that sounds good.
I don't think there's no way we're gonna sort this out without the information that I can't give you right now.
so I'm gonna read one more thing here. It says, as of September 30th, 1998, all harbors in the town of Mount Desert have been declared full.
98.
Right here. So I think we've kind of almost hashing stuff over that's not gonna happen.
I've had people that have probably been on the wait list that long.
Yeah,
Just for my minutes, I've written review of legal opinions. We've discussed and reviewed. And committee will wait until data from mooring registration is in regards to wait list and other matters for 2025 form.
Yeah, did we want to talk about this, landowner can give up property rights to obtain a mooring by limiting such right in a deed?
Yeah. And
I don't
Patrick's-
understand that.
Patrick's take on that is, yes, they can, but it's not something the town should be involved in.
there you go. That's a good one. I like that answer.
Plain
So
and
I can
simple.
buy a house and they give up their right, but if I
The
buy the
South
house,
Shore
I come to
Cove
you.
owner, if they
Yeah.
wanna put in their deed that that piece of property doesn't have any rights to a riparian mooring out in front there, then they can do that, but there's nothing we should get involved in at all.
Definitely.
So the person that buys the house can come to you and say, I want a mooring there, and
They
you,
can, and then they've gotta have a fight with their,
whoever they bought it from, or
with the deed, or whatever that process is. It is absolutely nothing to do with us.
We're giving
If
it,
they came to me and said, I want a mooring out there, everything was good and there was a spot, I would give it to them. Then they would be in a legal battle with someone that would not be involving us, because we did nothing wrong.
right,
Right, okay, thanks.
That one's a
explains it.
simple one.
John, when you're setting all this stuff up, is there a way that when someone has downsized their boat, but they haven't made sure you know it, and they're on a larger mooring, is there a way that in their system that would pop up every time they register?
It only, if I notice it when they give me their registration, when I enter the information. If the registration numbers don't match the previous one, then it would raise an alarm to me that something's changed and.
but you're not gonna take a mooring away from a 40 series mooring away from somebody who has
No,
a
I'm
30
gonna
series.
put them on the
Yeah.
downgrade list to get
Yeah,
a smaller mooring when it comes available.
That's my,
Which
That was
there's
my point,
multiple in our system right now that are in that status. They're waiting for,
I have a question, that I haven't found an answer to. If you have so much invested in a mooring and you either sell out your boat or anything, who sets the rate of how much the reimbursement is.
You haven't had to buy a mooring for a while.
You mean, who sets the price of how much you sell it for?
Yeah,
Generally, when someone tells me they're giving up a mooring, I say, contact your mooring inspector and get them to give you what their best guess is that it's worth in its current condition.
that includes floats.
It might.
Sure.
So if you
have to
don't
come
like,
up with a value,
if you're giving up your mooring and I got that spot. And I can go to you and say, well, I'll give you $1,000, but you want 2,000, then I'll just say, well, they'll tow your mooring ashore and put my new mooring there.
so that is the other caveat. If you have a mooring.
You're not getting the mooring, you're getting that piece of
And you
bottom.
want $5,000 for it, and Eric is saying, I ain't giving you $5,000 for that. He can say, all right, I can't make a deal with Rick, so, I'm gonna get Jason Chapman to build me a brand new one for $3,000. Rick, you gotta get your mooring out of there. You can plant it on your dooryard. So it behooves somebody to be reasonable, and come up with a deal, and you write them a bill of sale, and it's done.
Okay, I understand this is not a money-making scheme. That's the idea, to prevent that, but moorings are very expensive now, and floats are very expensive. So if somebody should give up something like that, I think it's only fair that they get reimbursed for what it.
99% of the time, the person who's giving up gear gets sold.
Yeah.
I can only think of one or two occasions over the years that it hasn't happened that way.
Right.
Josh, my gear was abandoned. And so they just took the money as collateral for the work they had done. So I never
Sure,
actually.
it had a
bought it
mechanic's
from them.
lien on it or something.
Kinda,
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't actually a lien, I think it was just, you know, the guy that was doing the moorings, Matt. you
Yeah,
know, He
sure.
just said, you know what, you just pay me what I think the mooring's worth, and I'll just take that off the bill when the guy comes to collect.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, he basically put a mechanic's lien on a mooring. It's
Yeah.
happened multiple times.
Yeah.
I mean, a full overhaul on a 400 series mooring can cost several $1,000s
Yeah,
if it needs bottom and top chain, and it's yeah,
sure.
John, I know there was a fisherman's float mooring weight
there
limit,
still is.
but what about like for a Rick float?
So those floats don't really fall into any category. So I have one right now that I'm working on. Nancy King passed away. She owns half of a float with Bill Fernald. So once I get everything settled with the son and they get whatever probate court and everything figured out, I will go, because that can hold either a 300 or a 400 series boat. So the last one that changed hands went to a 300 series. So my first offer will be to whoever's number one on the 400 list. If they agree to wanting a float, we'll come up with a price on what half of that float's worth, plus the one mooring that goes with that side, and they'll purchase it. If the 400 says, no, I have no interest in a float, I'll go to the 300 list and offer. I'll bounce back and forth until somebody accepts it.
So what do you do with Rick, who's got one float, two moorings, both in his name, if Rick, Moved
There's
Tahoe.
only two people in the harbor that are in Rick's situation, and neither one of them have ever come up for a give up, so I would potentially split it into two.
Well, my situation is a little different. I have I have a float because I had a boat dealer's license.
Mm.
And at times I had demo boats.
Sure.
And my own boat.
Yeah.
So,
But if for some reason Rick's float came up for an option, the potential would be it would get split in half and it would have two owners.
and
Just
they're
like-
only good for a float anyway, so you're gonna want a float,
Sure.
they're gonna need a float.
That would be my first thought on what I would do with it.
all right, folks. Are we still gonna talk about moorings? I have a topic I'd like to present to Howie.
Yes,
I think we need more parking on Huntington Lane.
That was a suggestion at one point. Story, were you the one who, it was you or
I'm
Donna?
against it.
It
Yeah.
was Donna.
Oh, it was Donna then. Yeah, Donna suggested that.
Rick and I had suggested that, and then, it was brought to the parking committee, I believe at the last meeting.
No, not yet. We haven't had our meeting yet.
Yeah, we
Oh.
haven't had, yeah, our next meeting is is January 30th or something. I can't
Well,
remember.
the reason I
20th.
brought it up is, it would have, if it were gonna be approved, it would have to go before town meeting, probably.
Right,
Because right now, there's no parking unless you happen to be at Clifton Dock and need to leave your car somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
We,
so,
you could, I mean, there's room enough to park one side of that street.
There's a limit from Kimball Road down to basically the harbor. And so we're gonna bring that up. I was gonna bring that up at the next subcommittee meeting
yeah,
for us to discuss. And I have a copy of how in the traffic ordinance it's written. There's nothing wide, it's a wide road. Donna's brought it up, Rick's brought it up. So basically beyond Kimball coming, it'd have to be from Kimball down through. So that could alleviate some parking.
yeah, and I was bringing it to your committee, because you could set like no overnight parking, or, I'm thinking of overflow parking for the marina
right,
during the day.
yep,
And
You guys-
especially for when we have the farmer's market, it would really take the pressure off of that and make it a lot safer and available for
Well,
people.
yeah, there's all kinds of reasons.
All
to
kinds of
have it.
reasons, exactly.
You guys would have to put what you wanted together with your committee. Bring it back to this committee, get this committee to vote, and we will
send
it to the
parking
parking committee.
right,
And
street committee. or
whenever they
whatever.
have a meeting,
Traffic,
Traffic.
Regulate, but there's nothing that, as far as I know from the ordinance, there's no limitation on parking on the side of the road in Huntington. Except for from Kimball down, so around the
yeah,
corner. So basically by the end of
there are signs up there.
but on
So,
one
okay,
side,
well, we,
you guys that are fishermen are really aware of it, but I was flabbergasted this morning. I went down there at 9 o'clock. And basically both parking lots were solid full.
Huh.
And they're not all fishermen, because you guys hauled out, we know where they're going to Cranberry Island.
No, right.
And it's a huge impact on us.
Yeah.
I'm talking in January, 9th,
yeah,
the parking lot's almost full. What are we gonna do August 9th?
right,
And, so it's a big, big problem. And
This would help
Try-
to alleviate it. If we could get parking on that
Yeah.
street, it would really alleviate it, help to alleviate it.
so,
we add that to the agenda, Howard?
yes,
Thank
yep,
you.
okay.
absolutely.
There's also, the town also owns about 20 feet in front of 20-foot wide strip or whatever in front of the Kimball Terrace that could be turned into parking.
Yes, that's right, that's true, Jim. I agree.
Good
You know.
point.
Well, anyway, we're trying to address problems. And, I mean, obviously the mooring's a big deal, but this other thing is too.
Yes,
Okay,
So unless you have anything else, I have just an update on the 2023 calendar year.
that'd be good, yeah.
Just remember, this is a calendar year, not our fiscal year that the town operates, but every January 1st, I have to calculate how much we're gonna send for a check to Submerged Lands for the shadow we cast. They take 4% of everything recreational we do in the marina, and they take 2% of everything that's commercial. So we're sending them a check for a little over, it's like $30,500 and something this year. It's up about $2,000 from last year. So 2022, the marina brought in a gross of 1.03 million. 2023 calendar year, we're up 12% to 1.158. So year over year, it's quite an increase.
Yeah.
And it's across the board. It's slip, moorings, everything's up, even commercial.
That was without a rate increase.
No, that does have a rate increase in it, but, the increase is far above what the increase was.
right, right.
So all in all, we're,
So you're saying you were a lot busier?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. You know, it's amazing, every year we're full, but we seem to keep, even without a rate increase, we keep increasing
yeah.
our income, so at some point that it's gonna have to, stop, but it's pretty amazing.
Guess a bigger boat takes the same dock, so you get more revenue.
All in all, we're doing quite well,
So-
and
12% for the year, basically.
up 12.4%.
12.4.
Okay, folks, any other topics we want to bring up?
What's the story with the new pier? You know,
I met with the, construction, the engineer and the stone masons today. They're gonna start putting the stone in place next week. I think they said guesstimate weather permitting about a month. Shortly after that, everything could be in a usable fashion, minus a hot top coating in May.
okay.
So we may, a month and a half from now, it may be in operation.
Well,
I have a
Everything
question.
seems-
Go ahead,
Um,
Donna.
When do you, John, when do you need the parking committee information to come back to this committee so that you can get it, so that it can go on town meeting? You said, whatever that process is that they need to do. When do you need that by?
The parking committee stuff, we haven't discussed anything about sending anything from them to town meeting. The parking committee needs to make a motion to this committee at our next meeting with whatever they come up with. And then we will send it on to the town of Mount Desert Parking and whatever its name is.
Oh, okay. So is there any timeline
Nothing
necessary?
from us gonna go directly to town meeting. We're gonna send a motion idea to whatever that committee's name is, and they'll have to take it up and push it forward if they decide that that's something they want to do.
Okay, is there any time frame that we need to do that by?
Well, the parking committee is meeting when?
The end of January.
2 weeks
Okay.
from
So if they meet
Oh,
there
no.
and
Wait,
23rd, I think.
is that one?
if they meet then and come up with an option,
Need
they
to have
can
something for us.
bring
how
it
we,
back to us in February.
Second week at the harbor committee meeting, right?
But if they
Hold on.
takes them longer than that, maybe we don't see it till March.
Okay, we're not meeting until January 30th. That's when we meet. I know it was
Okay.
the end.
How
So
come not meeting the 23rd? Are we just doing it the last
that
week?
committee can discuss
Yeah,
it
that's
if
3
they
weeks.
can come up with a solid plan and bring it back to this
Oh,
committee.
There's something I don't
Then
know.
this committee can vote on it and
I'm
we'll
gonna-
send the.
And then you send it to the parking
The
committee, whatever that is. for the
Traffic
town.
and ordinance, traffic
Okay.
ordinance, whatever
All
it's
right.
called.
Good.
Okay. All right, thank you. I understand.
I'll send out another email.
Okay, folks. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, Jim Bright, before you go, I just wanted to show you what I brought in today.
I knew you were gonna bring it today.
It's a picture I offered to give him. It's of the boathouses in Islesford. That, he's got one of them. So,
Oh,
so I saw him down there and I had taken this picture years ago.
very
so
nice.
I wanted to give it to him. Yeah.
Well,
I knew you would show up with it today.
Yeah, of course.
Since it's not here, maybe we could just,
Auction,
Raffle it off.
I raffle it off or something, yeah.
too bad, Jim.
Mhm.
Huh? Yeah.
You didn't show up.
Must be present.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
must be
present.
present to accept.
To win, yeah.
I was offered one of those 25 years ago.
All right, well, maybe, maybe next time it'll happen. We'll see what
Well,
happens.
Hopefully I'll be away in February and I can get it in March.
Okay, all right, all right. I think I'll be away in April.
Or you
All
could
right.
leave it down in the harbor master office. I'll get down there and get it.
Oh, you want to take it?
Not tonight.
Okay,
I'm not going back to the office.
no problem.
I don't want to bend it in my
All right,
truck.
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, thank you, Howie.
Of course.
Okay,
Nice.
motion, folks, to adjourn.
Second.
So
Motion
moved.
second. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you very much.
Can you dip down just a second?